Hi, and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to my little podcast. We are Kitchen Conversations. It's a podcast all about pickleball, but not specifically how to play pickleball, but more so the people behind the paddle, the people that love playing the game. And our goal, in very simple terms, is to hopefully inspire someone, and maybe that's you, to get off the couch and try this game for the very first time. And we think this episode today with President Diana Dowthwaite from the Ottawa Pickleball Association is going to be successful in that endeavor. We had a chance to sit down and talk to Diana recently about all the things that the Ottawa Pickleball Association is up to, and she is incredibly proud, and rightfully so, of the programming and the commitment that they have to the game of pickleball. Enjoy this episode with Diana Dowthwaite, President of the Ottawa Pickleball Association, here on Kitchen Conversations. Well, Diana, welcome to Kitchen Conversations. Welcome to the podcast. And let me start by thanking you for being here. I have so much I want to get into this evening with you in a conversation. There's just lots to cover, but I need to start by thanking you personally for all of your support for the podcast. When I look back through my guest list, 3 people that have been on the podcast so far. The release dates of some of those are yet to be determined, but Dr. Colin Campbell and Andrea Douglas, and of course, Matthew Kawamoto. And we'll talk about Matthew, I'm sure, at some point. But I just really need to say thank you. Reached out to you kind of out of nowhere and asked if you would like to be on the podcast. And from there, you've been just so generous in connecting me with really 3 incredible guests. So thank you. I want to thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. There's lots of interesting people that are working and volunteering in the world of pickleball.
Isn't it something? Yeah. My wife keeps saying, how do you keep getting these people to come on a podcast with a guy that's never done a podcast? I said, it's pickleball. If it was anything else, I think I'd be getting a lot of no thank yous, but yeah, the pickleball people are just amazing. So yeah. So thank you. I appreciate all that help. I'd like to break tonight's conversation down, if we can, into 3 rallies, Diana. I've had some luck with this. It kind of makes sense. I think the listener gets a chance to get to know a little bit about you and your background. And then we'll dive into rally 2, which is kind of the game of pickleball. And we'll talk extensively about that tonight. And then third rally is really the focus of the podcast. And that's to discuss the Ottawa Pickleball Association, your role, your involvement. I know you're very proud of the club. We've had some off-camera conversations about it, and I'm really inspired and impressed by the mandate that you have in place and the hard work that you and the board are doing there. So if you don't mind, can we start with maybe talking a bit about your background, maybe a touch on your working career, any sports that maybe you've played in your life, and then from there we'll jump into rally 2.
So grew up in Nova Scotia. So husband and I were in Nova Scotia, and then came to Ottawa for a federal government job, and then still with family in Nova Scotia, and we settled in Ottawa. And I had a career with the federal government, ending as a government executive with national programming, and I just retired pre-COVID, and husband came here, and he was a high school teacher and a coach. And so there's been a real use for Paul with the Ottawa Pickleball Association. And so we settled in Ottawa and raised our 2 children, and always went back to Nova Scotia with lots of Nova Scotia links. And then definitely sports is a huge part of both Paul and my life, from a coaching perspective and from a playing perspective. I played volleyball for about 35 years, coaching and playing. So that was a very nice transportable skill set to pickleball, and coached soccer and volleyball, and husband coached the kids as well. So we spent a lot of time with our kids coaching and playing. And part of the time pre-children, so volunteering was a really big part of my life. So I was a Big Sister with the Big Sisters organization. And then I was on the board with Big Sisters as well. So volunteering with my children and volunteering for something I believe in has always been a really important.
Yeah, I love it. Isn't it absolutely amazing when we look back on some of that, Diane? I know Fran and I do. You know, we had the 2 boys, and they were heavily involved in sports as well. But we will often now look back and go, how did we do it? How do we end up in 2 places at the same time? Because we had one child over here, another one over here. We were busy. We had, a small family business that kept us busy, and we loved it. But I look back now at, I'm 59, but I look back in those, when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and going through all that and into my 40s, and I don't know where the energy came from. I mean,
I know, because we had both girls were in high level competitive sports.
Right.
So we drew straws. Like one was in Toronto for hockey, the other one was in Montreal for ringette or for soccer. So it was a huge part of our lives, spending time with our children,
Yes.
supporting our children. And
Well,
yeah.
I've admitted this on previous podcasts, and I don't mind sharing it with you. But I cried at the final games for both of my boys in high school. I knew neither were going on to varsity level university. They were, they're going to play pickup this and that and whatever. But there was a moment as a parent when I recognized that this friend group that I had created through sports, through the kids' lives, and we all know what that's like, and it was wonderful. We met some of the most amazing people, and I think that's part of what I love about pickleball. I've kind of replaced that group a little bit later in life, unknowingly getting into the game and recognizing those friendships and those bonds that get made on the pickleball court. So it's great. And the city of Ottawa, both boys went, one to U Ottawa, one to Carleton. So you can imagine there was a little bit of headbutting at the kitchen table because of the Panda game and some other things that happened between those two schools. But yeah, we have very fond memories of the boys being in Ottawa. In fact, our youngest Adam is still there completing his master's at U Ottawa and hopes to be in a classroom in Ottawa this September. Yeah, but went out today and shot an 81 at Irish Hills. So was thrilled. Yeah. Yeah. He said, I ignored the forecast data, went out and shot the best round of my life. So yeah, so we think the world of Ottawa. I can see how you and Paul would love it there. And it's just a great city. Fran and I have talked often about that being a possible spot for us down the road, depending on grandkids and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, well, great. Well, I appreciate all that. Let's jump into Rally 2, because this crazy game that you and I and so many have fallen in love with. What is it? What is it about the magic moment, Diana, that I've had so many conversations with people courtside, and I think it really is part of what got me thinking about doing a podcast about pickleball is just the love that we have for this game and the passion. And we can play every day, twice a day, and it's still not enough. And I'd love to hear your perspective. What do you think it is about the game that hooks people almost immediately?
So it's interesting because a year before I retired, I was thinking, what am I going to do? How do I contribute? How am I going to keep myself busy? How do I keep fit? How do I create social circles, social networks? So I'm the type of person, if I want to learn something new, I always take lessons. So there was somebody I played volleyball with who was a big pickleball proponent. So she finally persuaded me, and then we signed up for pickleball lessons. And that was like a 4-week series. And we picked it up very, very quickly with our sports background, and then joined the OPA, the Ottawa Pickleball Association. And then it was just kind of just went from there. It just became a new life, a new way of looking at fitness and social. And I'm the type of person, I knew I needed to be busy. Playing probably was not enough. And so I applied, or I put my name forward to be a volunteer on the board. And then that opened up a whole wide circle of opportunities. So what makes pickleball so amazing is, from my perspective, is that it's a very social sport. I mean, you play very short games, and then you branch off, you tap your paddles, you branch off, you talk about the game, then you come back out again with another different group of 4. You don't focus on the past 10 minutes, you focus on the next 10 minutes. And the part that I think is quite remarkable, because I've seen all different levels coming through the OPA, is that everybody comes in usually with a different sports background or no sports background. And sometimes a no sports background is even better than a specific sports background, because I really had to work on certain volleyball tendencies that I had that were not necessarily the greatest for pickleball. And everybody can come in with something. And then it's a very tiny paddle. It's a very not threatening ball. The space isn't very big. And, we teach children. We've gone into some elementary schools. It's much easier to teach children to play pickleball than it is to teach them to play tennis. And so you can come in as a relatively new person to pickleball, and you can make contact with the ball. And that's really the biggest thing. You can hit the ball over the net. It may go wide, it may go high, but you've contacted with the ball and you participated in a game. And I think that's the beauty of the sport. And you can go wherever you want to with pickleball. You have the opportunity to get better, and take lessons, and you will get better. You can play with your friends. You can just continue to improve, and I think that's
Yeah,
amazing.
no, all of those are amazing points. And, I think when you look at the generational opportunities, Diana, that exist, you can have grandparents playing with, very young grandchildren. And maybe they're not playing quote unquote pickleball in the sense that they're keeping score and they're worrying about rallies, but they are, batting the ball
Mhm.
back and forth across the net. And I've seen it and you've seen it. And it's a moment to be able to see that, a 70, 80-year-old grandparent out there with their grandchild just having the time of their life. And from there, maybe the sport becomes something that youngster wants to pursue and become, maybe a bit more passionate down the road. But the chance to do that in pickleball is amazing. And it's interesting to hear you talk about volleyball. I talked to Cam Taylor a couple days ago, and we'll get his podcast out at some point. But he was a volleyball player, and he talked about the blocking being a bit of a benefit to pickleball in a
Mhm.
sense of the defensive side of the
Mhm.
game. So it's very
Yeah.
interesting to hear you mention volleyball as well. But he also said people coming in with
Yeah.
no sports background is a benefit because they're not bringing bad habits. So
They don't have any bad habits. Yeah. But go back to your point about playing with your grandchildren. So I have two daughters who are one in Toronto and one in Nova Scotia. And every time they come back to Ottawa or we gather, there's always a pickleball game. And they're both phenomenal athletes, but they don't have any clue about what's a non-volley zone and smashing the ball, leaping almost over the net. And it is just the most fun. I mean, I'm the best trash talker with my daughters, and we just have the greatest time. And it's something we can all do together with all our different skill sets. And it just really irritates me to no end. I've worked really hard on different skills to be able to do different things. And all of a sudden, both of them are doing these shots that I've like had to train so hard. And it's just athleticism, and it's irritating. And
yeah, well, the chance to get out and do things like that. I have a 22-year-old, the one that's in Ottawa, who comes home often enough that we get to play periodically. And yeah, same story. I mean, he runs like just like the wind out there. He's got a tank full of gas. He never gets tired, and he can do some things that I only wish I could. Yeah, I only wish I could do. But yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance to the game, and I'm glad you also touched on the length of the game because I think that is a magic part of that moment of falling in love, where you're only out there for 10, 12, 15 minutes, and you're rattle up a score and you don't particularly care about the score when you come off the court. You mingle for a bit and then back out you go. It's your paddle turn again and away you go. And yeah, it's just something else. And I can't quite put my finger on one specific part of it that stands out, but everything you've mentioned I agree with 100%. And the ability to just go out and I guess also I would say plug in where you'd like to plug in and stay there, or take some coaching and take some proper coaching and learn to play the game and try to become one of those better players. But there are so many, I think, Diana, that love it at the rec level, and they're really not maybe necessarily there, not to put words in their mouth, but they may not actually be there for the game itself, but what the game brings them, beyond the game, which is the socialization. And I think this game solves a lot of loneliness. And I think it's often missed on some of us how much loneliness is out there. And to be able to have something to look forward to, even if it's twice a week or 3 times a week, and you stop by your local club or an outdoor facility, and you know that so and so and so and so are going to be there, and the chance to connect and talk about maybe what's happening politically or with the weather. And, the game is sort of the reason we're there, but the benefit we're getting, I think, exceeds the game by leaps and bounds.
it's interesting. I was teaching one of our beginner levels 2 years ago. I was teaching a group of women that were in this league. And then they told me it was a couple months later. They just had met. There was four of them. They had just met, and they told me we're going to Naples for a week for a holiday. And like they didn't even really know each other. We did an article on them, and they in our newsletter, and they wrote a and they gave us some photos. And it was just amazing. These four women just met through playing pickleball, taking some lessons, instructor led lessons, went off to Naples together, didn't really know each other all that well, and had the best week ever playing and dining and whatever they did in their week. And then it became an annual thing, and they're like fast friends. So to me, you cannot find that in almost any other sport. And I just think that's
Yeah, I love
amazing.
everything about that. My wife, same thing. She and a couple of ladies that met at the pickleball club. There was a couple that knew each other sort of casually, Diana, but they ended up taking off to Iceland of all places and had the time of their life and
Mhm.
rented a car and shared accommodations and toured around, for a week together and still play regularly twice a week now. And yeah, it's something, and I agree. I can't think of another sport where that sort of friendship becomes so ingrained and so quickly and yeah, I love all that. So where do you plug in before we wrap up rally 2 and move on to 3 and talk about the OPA and all the great things that are happening there? Where do you personally plug into the game today when you're not wearing your OPA hat, you're not, training and drilling and where do you just love social play? Do you do tournaments? Do you like singles, doubles? Tell me about your game.
So it's interesting because when I first started and we started playing, my husband and I we went into tons of tournaments, and it was the coolest thing. And we would we would win at our levels, right? And we would proudly, like, we would put our medals on and then take a photo for our daughters. It was only the daughters that ever got the photo, and it's like, ah, look what your parents can do, right? And then we would give our medals away. I didn't care about the medals. It was like showing our children that, like, mom and dad still have it. So did a lot of tournaments at the beginning, and played most of my play during the winter is with the Ottawa Pickleball Association, that at different opportunities. There's social play, there's tournament prep play, there's mixed leagues. We have lots of different opportunities. And lately, I haven't really gone into very many tournaments because it doesn't have the same desire for me. I'm not willing to go and give up an entire weekend and sit for 2 or 3 hours between matches. And it just doesn't have that same attraction that it did when I first started playing. I'll go into tournaments every so often, but I have a lot of other things I'd like to do that I'm not willing to, give up every single weekend for tournaments. Whereas others love tournaments and playing tournaments all the time and really enjoy the social connection. So I play every day, pretty much every day, but it's different. Almost every day is different. And I'm playing with different people almost every day, which is pretty cool. 2 times a week, I'm leading a drilling session with a couple of courts of people. And then other times I'm doing a social play or I'm doing more of a competitive play. So I find I get lots of opportunities during the winter. And then outside, we move outside almost within the next week or two, and then in with different people
Yeah.
outside.
Well, it's just an amazing game. And I think, the tournament side, for someone listening, I mean, the goal of the podcast, I try to mention this every time and it's a good time to bring it up now, but the ultimate goal right now, Diana, really is nothing more than to inspire one person per episode to pick up a paddle and try the game for the very first time. That's my ambition. I hope one day I get a comment saying I was listening to your podcast with Diana and, I've been thinking about the game and I finally picked up a paddle and I went out and I found a local court and I played and I loved it. And if I get that comment, then I'm gonna be very happy because that's for me. I think if you don't try this game, and maybe it's not for you, but it would be a rare person to not fall in love with this game. And I've had the pleasure of introducing dozens of people, through volunteer work at the local club here in Kingston to the game for the very first time. And it's a moment for me, as a volunteer to see the look on their face. And because sometimes they're a little reluctant coming in, but after they hit a few balls and the smile starts and the hook. But, I would say on the tournament side, I don't think it's for everybody. And I too have done a few, and they're not my favorite. I'm considering maybe trying a couple more this year, but it's a different way of playing, isn't it? You talked about the length of time between games. It becomes more of a mental game to me than a physical game during a tournament weekend because you've got to stay focused. Nutrition, hydration. It's work. It's a lot of work to play a tournament.
And it's a totally different kind of play than you would get if you were playing our leagues in the OPA. Tournament is all about winning. And that means winning means hitting to the weaker player or doing a lob on somebody that can't get a lob and doing it over and over and over to be able to win the point or win the game. And I'm not sure that winning is the most important thing right now for where I am on the game. I'm about developing my skills and improving the way I play. And a tournament play is different. It's definitely different.
It is. And I think, I would encourage those trying the game, maybe who haven't tried a tournament. I think, I think you should try because your point earlier is well taken, and that is that some people fall madly in love. And I know people at our local club will drill. They don't really play at home. They just drill, drill, drill in preparation for the next tournament. If that happens to be here, great. If it happens to be in London or Windsor or Naples or wherever, I mean, we had a few members that head down to the U.S. Open and play this year. Got through the lottery and did it. And so I think it really is a matter of trying it maybe once and seeing how it sits with you. But yeah, I'm on your side with all that. And I think I have a hard time with the targeting of people, but yeah, in a tournament, that's exactly what needs to happen and it's expected. And yeah, you sign up and that's what it is. Well, that's great. Well, I'm glad to hear you're playing every day. I'm not quite there yet. I'm probably 4 times a week, but I took about 18 months off, had a bit of a shoulder injury, and I promised myself I'd slowly get back into it. But oh my gosh, it's hard. I can't say no. It just happened. So I'm not far from being back into it probably 5 days a week. So yeah, well, that's great. Well, listen, thank you for all of that. Let's jump into Rally 3 because I'm really excited to talk about the OPA and your work there. And I know in talking to you, lining up some of the guests that I mentioned earlier, and again, thank you for all of your generosity and helping me with that. I know how proud you are of the organization. You hold it in high regard, and compared against other organizations, perhaps across the country, not just across Ontario, I think you're doing some things that are quite unique. And of course, I had a chance, thanks to you, to talk to Matthew Kawamoto and his mom, Linda, and Stephanie and Jessica. And what a terrific conversation. And the passion that that family has and the reputation that that family has is really just everything that you need to know about pickleball. But yeah, Matthew mentioned some of the things that were happening within OPA. And I'd just love for you to run with this evening and tell me everything that's going on with the organization, your role, and yeah, just please take your time with this.
So very proud of the work of the OPA, and I really think that we're a leader in the organization and the management of play within Ottawa. It's 14 years old from incorporation, so we're a not-for-profit. We just had a big party at the Forge on Saturday night with over 200 people came and on the 11 courts to celebrate our 12th anniversary and our year-end party. And it was just absolutely amazing to see all of the members, and we invited friends and family as well. So, 12 years ago, there were a very few people playing pickleball in Ottawa, but it's called like a kitchen table. It's like a kitchen table association that got created 12 years ago. So we call them the founders. We had a couple of key people who are the ones to be thanked for their leadership in getting the Ottawa Pickleball Association on the road. And they sat around a table and they were chalking lines on old decrepit tennis courts and trying to find space for where these enthusiastic people could play pickleball. And then they got, what was it, 50 people put in a toonie, and they rented a hall. Isn't that the coolest thing? They rented a hall, and then they got together in the hall and they decided that they wanted to create an association and with strategic direction. And somebody pulled money out of their pocket to put the money on the table for being incorporated and creating a board. So it was that leadership that led to the creation of the Ottawa Pickleball Association. And 14 years later, I believe we're a leader in probably the most well-organized clubs. I'm probably bragging, but could be in North America. That's just my opinion. But we've evolved to the point that we have an executive director who's kind of the backbone of the organization, who has created. We have an online registration, an online payment system. We have an interestingly, and I'll talk about it in a bit, different way of levels for our players that's different than anywhere else you'll find. So we have an executive director who's a paid employee, who is kind of the leader of our organization. We have brought in a head club pro. So we have Matthew, who leads our skills development. And so with those two core people, and we have a really good board, sound board of volunteers, We have a group of instructors through the OPA. We have trained assessors in the OPA. And then we call them league coordinators who run our leagues as well. And so with that whole cadre of, our two paid staff, our volunteers, we have a really sound program that we offer our members. We currently started with the 50. We're up to 700 members, but we have a mailing list of probably 1,000 people who would love to join the OPA, but we cannot accommodate them because we just don't have the venues. So we have a good solid base. We are in 15 different facilities across the city. So we have agreements with a couple of school boards. So we rent the school gyms. We also are in a community center. We've rented some space at the Forge. And any new facilities coming into Ottawa, we have a potential new facility coming in that we've negotiated to rent some space from them as well. So we run probably 60 leagues through different sessions. So we have a fall session, a winter session, and a spring session. We don't run during the summer. And all of those different league sessions are managed through a league management system that our executive director manages. And there's a whole bunch of different kinds of leagues that we offer our members. So we're really big on socials. So there's probably 3 or 4 different ones that are social. So you play mixed levels play, and then you go out for dinner or drinks afterwards. And then we have a tournament prep for those that are really keen on tournaments. We have a couple of tournament prep sessions we offer. We offer some mixed level leagues. So 2 different levels will play. So the lower level gets to play with the higher level, which we piloted with a couple of our different levels with great success. And then we have our regular leagues. And then we offer instruction leagues. So instructors instruct for the majority of the time. And we offer clinics. Wow. So we have a huge, broad range of offerings for our members.
What an undertaking, though. But when you go back to that grassroots moment, those people getting together, having the vision and seeing it, and I'm interested in this question for you, Diana. I've been thinking about this since I knew you and I were going to be chatting at some point. But let's go back in the history of the game. Let's go back to 1965, Bainbridge Island, when it all started, and how it started, and really the innocence of that moment, really. And those 3 guys, with Barney McCallum and his buddies, and the kids were kind of, getting on everybody's nerves. And so they kind of really created almost the perfect game without meaning to. I mean, very little has changed from a rules perspective once they kind of perfected it. Obviously the first couple of years and summers, but really that kitchen line that kept getting moved back and back, because a kitchen, for those that aren't, was not part of the original game. They implemented that for a reason, because one of their friends was, 6.5 feet tall and had this unbelievable advantage at the net. But, when I think about the game, and I've had a chance to talk to Hall of Famers like Steve Peranto, and, the legacy of this game and the importance of that grassroots of getting it started. And I'm interested in your perspective on, the importance of all of that, the having the right people at the right time. And you talk about these courts, and I think for those players coming into the game today, myself included, because I've only been around the game for about 3 years, I don't have a genuine deep appreciation for what pickleball looked like, let's say in Ottawa in 2012. And the court availability or lack thereof. I mean, I know here in Kingston, we had one person in particular, a gentleman named Chuck McDonald, working very diligently with the city to try to get court space and try to take over, if you will, almost abandoned tennis courts, Diana. I mean, he needed a lawnmower more than he needed painter's tape. These courts were rough. So I'd love your perspective on how you've seen that grassroots movement, the importance of that. And then, looking at the game from an historical perspective, and where do you see all of that kind of coming together and ultimately ending up with what you have today?
Well, from the stories, from the founders' stories, they definitely were going out with those courts that were cracked, and they had to fill holes and bring their chalk and do their measuring. And then they were able to, they had to do a lot with the city to persuade the city to allow pickleball. And because most of it, when it came in Ottawa, was through community centers. It was community centers using the badminton lines, and then buying a couple of nets. And that's kind of where it started, was in community centers in Ottawa. And then it just grew from there to coming into a fully fledged association, and then looking for different rental opportunities and expanding the reach. Because it was so funny when my volleyball friend that was persuading me to play pickleball, because there wasn't enough people playing and they wanted to bring more athletes in. And it's just a total different situation now, because when I started as president, one of our mission statements was to attract people to come in and play pickleball. I mean, that was
Right.
6 or 8 years ago. Attract people to
Right.
come in, and it's like we just finished doing a strategic planning exercise, and it's like that's not needed anymore. We have a mailing list of 1,000 people who would like to join. So attracting people to come into the
Yeah.
sport, that's pretty rare. And it's funny when you'll see, I was just watching this Netflix show, and then on part of the show, one of the characters like, I have to leave now, I have to go to my pickleball game. So it's becoming more
For
mainstream.
sure.
So it's and I think there's supposed to be a pickleball
Hmm.
movie, and so it's come quite far from those fledgling, first steps of filling the
Yeah.
cracks, and trying to find. I mean, I do believe space is still always going to be the issue. There is never enough space and venues to meet the need of all the people that are interested in playing
Yeah.
pickleball.
Yeah. Well, I think the game had a chance of not making it. I think, like many sports, there might have been a moment in history, and I don't know specifically when that was, and maybe no one does, but, for some reason it persevered. And I think really since COVID, I think that's when the explosion in the sport really did occur. I think it gained popularity. It took a long time, though, from 1965 to today to get to where it is. But your point's well
Mhm.
taken. It doesn't seem possible, Diana, to build enough court space right now, whether we're talking indoor, outdoor, rental facilities, purpose-built facilities, however you want to define that. It is continuing to be a challenge for the game. And it's so encouraging to hear the wait list that you have in Ottawa. And obviously
Mhm.
that speaks volumes to, the reputation, the brand equity within the OPA, and the hard work that, those founders began
Mhm.
with that dream, that vision, and to see it where it is today. I mean, you must, just be so proud. And clearly you've got it structured in a way that it's just, I mean, how do you make it any better? What shortcomings could possibly be there in the way you've structured it? So congratulations on all of that.
And and, and what's interesting with the OPA that I find different with almost any other organization is we focus on skills development. So we very much are looking for every opportunity we can to develop our players and use all of the different shots that are available in pickleball. We call it, we focus a lot of our attention on the soft game. And we have success when our players are at the non-volley zone and having long rallies at the non-volley zone versus being at the back of the court and doing a lot of more a banging, driving kind of game. So we really focus on skills development. And we came up with our own system of levels for our players. So we've gone out and done surveys with our members on numerous occasions. And the point that most people value the most about the OPA is the opportunity to play at level. That is always the biggest complaint in every organization you will ever find in pickleball, particularly pickleball, is I'm better, I want to play up, and people aren't my level. So we've created our own system. We call it color criteria, but it's levels that we've created, and with criteria in each level that moves up from a beginner to a Matthew level to a pro level. And in each of those, and we use colors. So we've just used a rainbow of colors. So your entry point, you're brand new to pickleball, you've never played, you come in as a violet player. And we'll offer you instruction, 12 weeks of instruction to develop you, and then you'll move up to the next level, which is an indigo level. And in each of our levels, we have created different, I don't know if you call them categories, that we use to assess our players. So if you want If you want to be at a certain level, so there's one, two, three, four. There's like 5 different levels inside your criteria. So we focus on positioning, and there's certain things you need to do at each level from a positioning perspective. We focus on the fast game. What are the things in the fast game? The slow game. We look at strategy. Are you moving with your partner at different levels? So we're looking, if you're at a beginning level, it's at a different level of criteria than you would if you're at a higher level. And what we do is under our head pro, who is he is our chief assessor, our evaluator, and we have a team of assessment team. We probably have 12 assessors who have been trained, and 2 times a year. So this is a very long and painful process for everybody, but 2 times a year we go in the fall and again in the winter, later in the winter, and we assess all of our players to those criteria, the players who are in our leagues. And we just finished doing an assessment session on Saturday. So we have all of the criteria are on the clipboards. We watch our players, we move them around, and they are assessed to the criteria for their level. And so they are either at level, they are meeting the criteria of the next level and they get moved up. They may not be meeting their current criteria, and they will get, it's like a report card, and they will be given the things they need to work on, and they'll be given the rest of the session to work on those skills, and they'll be reassessed to see if they've improved. And if not, and this doesn't happen very often, they'll be moved down a level. So we take that level play very seriously. And if I was going to say one thing that makes us the most unique is the credibility of our assessment system.
I can't imagine, and I assume that the membership embraces this in a way that makes sense, because I think that's what we all want as players, Diana, is to be playing, in a game that maybe we, that we're properly, prepared to play in. And it's interesting. I played socially today, and I pulled a guy aside at the end and I said, listen, I'm not sure why you're here. I don't know if it's to win games, if it's important to you to go home and just be able to say, hey, I played 8 games, I won 7. But I said, you spent the whole day when I was with you targeting the less experienced player. And I like to call it less experience. And I said, and that's great. But I said, there is some value in you perhaps throwing. I said, the only time I hit a ball today was when you had to serve to me. And the rest of the time, I sat there and watched 3 people, try to play pickleball. And so we had a really nice chat courtside, but I think there's no direction there for him to try to figure out, why am I doing this? And so I'm interested. The membership seems to embrace this, because it sounds to me like it's a pretty, I've never heard of this before, to be quite honest, that a club doing it at the level that you are doing it at.
And it's interesting when we do these assessments and we tell the players, everybody's nervous when you're being assessed, especially being assessed as an adult. I mean, how painful is that, right? But we tell them, and we don't care about the score. In fact, sometimes when we're doing assessments at some of our lower levels, we don't keep score. It's just first server, second server. So the focus is not on winning. The focus is not on the score. The focus is on the criteria that you're being assessed to. And the criteria says attempt a third shot.
Right.
Play in a banking rally of 3 or 4 shots. Sure. Serve deep, return deep. But so we have, the words change as the levels increase, but there's really a strong encouragement for our members to use the third shot drop, to use the third shot drive when it's necessary to get you to the 5th shot drop, and then to get to that net and to participate in that rally that we really strongly encourage. And we did try some time ago experiments with ladder leagues, or like more putting a competitive angle into it. And we find it totally changed the way people played. It put it back into a tournament play. Stronger player didn't touch the ball, just like you're talking about right now. Weaker player got all the balls and were targeted. And that's not the playing that we want to support in the OPA. We want everybody to participate and to have the opportunity to improve.
Well, I can't say enough about that. I mean, I think, it is the most beautiful game when it's played
Yeah.
properly. And I think this is what you're getting at here, Diana, is the sense of trying to educate
Mm-hmm.
people, to share the knowledge and to say, listen, the game's designed around certain parameters and certain expectations. And I always laugh. I call it the accidental reset. You'll see it at social play. You'll see serve, the return. And I think if you start counting rallies at that, that violet level, the indigo level, if you will, I mean, the number of rallies, if you get to 4, it's a pretty good
Mm-hmm.
rally. But the moment that group hits a double digit rally, and maybe it's by mistake, like it wasn't even by design, then all of a sudden you can see them going, wow, this is a different
Mm-hmm.
game. And I really think what you're doing is incredible. And again, I haven't been around the game that long, but I feel fairly connected to the game. And I have a lot of people that I chat with here, there, and everywhere. And I can't think of anywhere else where I'm hearing a program like that, a commitment to educating. And because really, I think that's what we're talking about, is education. We're educating them about the
Mm-hmm.
game, the essence and the nuances within the
Mm-hmm.
game. And so good on you. I think it's just fantastic. Yeah, it really is. Good for you.
Yeah, no, and there is a huge commitment to, our volunteer
Yeah.
assessors and a commitment by our membership as well. I mean, evaluation being assessed is not for everybody. And so, some people, this is not something they like, and then others really embrace it
Mm,
because, as I said, play
right.
at level, number one priority.
Yeah. Well, it's just, again, if you can get over that hurdle, get over that emotional roadblock, perhaps, of being assessed and recognizing that maybe moving down when it does happen, if it's rare, and I heard that, but maybe that is the best thing for your game. And maybe you will end up loving the game longer, enjoying the game better, and ultimately becoming a better pickleball player. I think sometimes we have to take a step back in order to take 2 steps forward. If we're just keep walking into a brick wall,
Mhm.
Diana, we're not getting anywhere. And the only way around the brick wall is to back up, take a look at the brick wall and go, well, hey, let's go this way. And yeah, I'm sure it's a difficult conversation the rare times it happens. But, with someone like Matthew Kawamoto, who I think, if you don't know who Matthew is listening to this podcast, you need to go to the Google and you need to look into this young man, and you need to find some video footage of him playing. It was just unbelievable how just incredible he is. And then to meet him and to understand his personality and that of his family and their commitment to the game. And there's so much to love about it, but they are just everything about pickleball that I think we're all so proud of. So
Yeah. So what's interesting, Matthew, it's the perceptiveness. I'm not sure if that's even the right word. He can look at a player and he sees things that I couldn't see in a million years. Yeah, and can provide that advice, that coaching advice. You're moving to the right, your paddles here, turn, and that has been invaluable for anybody who's participated in one of his clinics or training opportunities.
yeah, for sure. Well, this has all been great conversation. I'm mindful of the clock. We've been on for about 50 minutes, so I don't want to take advantage of that. But a couple of final questions for you, and then if there's anything that I didn't get to, because I'm brand new at this, so I'm not going to confess to be the best person to be doing this side of the microphone, but want to definitely give you a chance to touch anything that we missed on. But where do you and where do the OPA see artificial intelligence factoring into the game today? It's something I've been asking, different people at different times, but it's clearly coming. I talked to gentleman this morning, well, I guess early this afternoon, and they're implementing some AI technology in combination with a new pro that they've hired at Smash Pickleball. Brett Shepley and I had a chance to catch up. And so he sees an intersection of AI and human touch still, being very important. Where are you guys sitting on all of that today?
Probably not as far in the thinking as we should be. I know that there's some members who are using that they video their game and they're using it for analysis. Um, it's tricky when you have an organization of 700 people. It's there, and when
Yeah.
we're going out and assessing 60 leagues with
Yeah.
15 people per league, it's just time is an issue. Time is definitely an issue for
Mm,
us. We'll go out and send an assessment team out to a league for 2 hours or 3 hours, and they have to look at 15 players with all of that criteria. So it is something we need to look at more and to see if that's something that we could incorporate into our assessment system, our process, but in a way that doesn't become burdensome to the timing that we
Yeah.
have. It's pretty tricky to get to 60 leagues, within 3 weeks, and to have that data that we're able to tell players that they're moving up, they're moving down, or they're staying. So we struggle with that. But I know that is something that is evolving and that we're probably going to have to do more time and more thinking.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting as well, I think, Diana, to see where it might play a role in the pro
Mhm.
levels, when you start talking perhaps line calls or things like that. And we're just not going to get away from it. I think, as a parent of two kids looking for work and finding work, luckily, but, AI is certainly impacting the job market, and just it's so broad and so wide and so far reaching that it would be, I mean, it will impact pickleball and every other sport in the planet for that matter in some way, some form, some fashion. And I just hope whatever it does, that it benefits the game and doesn't detract from the game. That's sort of, my kind of backhead thinking on it all. But the other question I had for you was duper.
Mm.
And I'm almost afraid to say that today because it seems to be a bit of a hot button. But are you a fan of duper? And I had someone say recently that duper has one fundamental problem. You can be, you can have a duper rating at a club level, and then that's a totally different rating at tournament play. So we talked earlier about tournaments, but it's one thing to go in and play against Bob and Sue every week, every time, and you get to know Bob's weaknesses and where, Sue doesn't handle the lob so well. And so, their opinion of duper was it's not particularly valuable. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that rating
From an
system.
OPA perspective, not valuable at all. Um,
Okay.
so again, we're back to our criteria. Our criteria is age free and gender neutral. Okay, it's really
Yeah.
important. So our criteria applies to the 20-year-old active and the 70-year-old active. So
Right.
what we've seen and is that you could have a 70-year-old win a 4.0 tournament against 70-year-olds in that category, but would
Mm,
they win the tournament if they played against 20-year-olds? And so you're going to win your 4.0 as your 70-year-old in your criteria of your tournament for 70, but unable to compete with 20-year-olds at a 4.0, and yet they're getting a 4.0 rating. So what we've done is we've taken age and gender out, and we evaluate everybody. You're 70, you're 20, you're 50. We don't care. We don't care if you're male or you're female or whatever. We are evaluating you to the criteria. And the criteria talks a lot about third shots. Are you positioning? Are you traveling up to the non volley zone with your partner? Are you making the right shots? Can you maintain a rally? Can you change from a fast game to a slow game? So that's what we're looking at. And so the duper doesn't, we're not interested in it in our program that we offer in any way whatsoever.
yeah. Well, it's interesting insight. I appreciate you being so candid about that because it's an interesting topic. And there's people that are loving it, and then there's people that call it pooper duper and stupor duper. And so I certainly in Kingston, I know it's one of those conversations that I hear almost every time I'm at the club, either courtside, in the lobby, in the parking lot, coming and going. Somebody's upset about their duper. Like there's always somebody going, "What happened to your duper?" Like my, just
And it's interesting. So somebody wanted to get people together. Their duper rating was too high. And so if they wanted to register for the nationals, they would have to play at a 5.0 plus level, but they want to play with their partner because they're really at a 4.5 level. And so they're looking to see if they can get matches to lower their duper level. And then there's somebody else I know whose level was too low. It's just, uh,
Yeah, I think I mentioned I took about 18 months off from the game. I had a bit of a shoulder injury and had some cobwebs in my head with the game. I was overthinking everything. And so ended up doing a lot of travel. My wife and I drove across Canada and the US. We had the time of our lives in retirement, as you mentioned earlier, and we just loved it. But I didn't literally pick up a pickleball paddle for almost 18 months. So I integrated back into the game last fall, started playing here, there, and everywhere. And again, playing more regularly. But signed up for my Duper account literally 2 weeks ago because I'm in a ladder event on a weekend. I play at one of the clubs in a ladder event, so they wanted me to have a Duper. So I signed up, and lo and behold, somebody had already set up a Duper account. So I ended up with two Duper accounts, which is a whole nother story. But the long story short is I have a Duper rating right now of 4.3 or something. I am not a 4.3. And the only reason it's there is because whatever input had been done, unbeknownst to me, a year and a half, 2 years ago at a tournament that was held here in Kingston, I ended up doing okay in that tournament. But I am not that player. And so a buddy and I were trying to register for the provincials and and we can't. I can't play with them. I'm exactly that person that you're talking about, all because of Duper right now. So yeah. Oh yeah, it's crazy. I'm nowhere near, and I never will be, and nor do I care to be. I just, I love the game. I know where I fit, and I understand the numbers well enough to know I'm not that. So
I think there's going to be, I mean, it's a very interesting world as the growth of pickleball and the maturity of the support, and so as you start to see the growth and the sport mature, they're going to have to address ratings and Duper, and you see the Canadian, Pickleball Association, the national level, really upping their game and trying to bring together all of the provinces and the territories, and you'll see this, provincial tournaments and creating what will hopefully be a national team that would go to an Olympics at some point. So it's kind of in the evolution of the sport. I think you're going to see things mature. You're going to do your, what is it, norming, storming, forming, as an organization goes through all those stages to get to a point. And I think pickleball's, moving through that evolution to come to that place where it's going to be, a nationally recognized sport, which is, I think, is going to be pretty cool.
yeah, I love all that. And yeah, I think we're all in some way hoping for an Olympic, run at some point for sure for the game that we all love. Absolutely. Well, final couple thoughts, and then I'd love for you to just kind of give me any closing remarks that you might have. I want to make sure you have the final say in all of this. But what concerns you? This is my final question. What concerns you about the game today, if anything? And perhaps there isn't, but is there some element, some aspect, and whether you're talking paddle technology, Diana, you're talking attitude, you're talking maybe the demographic shift that might be shifting the essence of the game. We talk about the soft game. We talk about those third shot drives. And what is it about the game from your perspective? Because you do have a very unique perspective on the game because of your role with the OPA, and not just as a player and a fan of the game, but specific to that role. So love to know your thoughts on that.
Paddle technology, 100%. The game is becoming
Okay.
quite fast, and some of those paddles, what are they called? Boom paddles, or there's a name for these paddles.
Yeah.
And the ball is coming off those paddles extremely fast,
Hmm.
and and potentially very dangerous. And I think that we're seeing that technology maybe being placed in the hands of people who don't have the skill set how to use that technology safely. And
Yes.
especially, I see that with maybe some of younger playing with older players, and maybe some of that technology in the hands of people who don't have the control. And I think that could be very dangerous for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I agree.
and I'm seeing, and we really try to focus on. I try to focus on. I'm seeing a lot of, I'm calling body shots, a lot of shots coming
Yeah.
in hard on the body here, and then maybe even on the face. So the OPA strongly, we haven't mandated it, but we strongly encourage eyewear, protective eyewear. And we've sold hundreds of different pairs of glasses to our members. I've seen one guy was hit in the eyes 3 times. So
Wow.
I'm seeing some of that play, where I think it's lack of control by some players. And with those paddles, the face or the chest and some of the body bagging stuff, I find that that could be very dangerous. So I do think that the technology and the lack of skill set and the utilization of that technology is definitely something that could be risky.
Yeah, I concur with everything you've just said. And I think if there's a danger in that, Diana, it's that people who are listening to the podcast, that person that I'm inspiring to get off the couch and try this game for the very first time, we wouldn't want them to be afraid of the game. And I think up till now, that hasn't been an issue. I don't know a lot of people that have said, "Oh, I was afraid to try because I thought it was dangerous." I've heard people say, "Well, I've never played a racket sport, so I'm not sure I'll be any good," or "I've never been an athlete. I've never done any sport, so I'm not sure I would be any good at it." But I've yet to hear a player say to me, in the circle that I travel in, I'm not trying pickleball because I think it's too
No,
dangerous.
sure.
But I think to your point, the paddle speed and the ball speed in the wrong hands. It's one thing. Matthew Kawamoto is going to put that ball probably within 6 inches of where he's aiming. Most rec players aren't doing that. Getting it over the net's a miracle for many of us. And, to put that kind of power into someone's hands that could potentially harm someone is, it's not a good thing. So,
And we spend some time talking about shot selection and the safety of your shot selection. So if you and I are right across from each other on the non-volley zone, you were somehow it gets popped up to me, and I am across from you, like that number of feet across from you. Should I win the point by smashing the ball right at you that close? Do I need to win the point that way? Or am I a smarter player who can win the ball by putting the ball cross court where there's space and there's nobody by doing a smart cut cross court dink? So we're trying to teach people about the shot selection to win the point, which isn't necessarily you and I face to face, 8 feet apart or 16 feet apart or whatever, and I nail you. I don't need to win my point. I'm a smarter player, and I looked more skilled as a player if I do a smarter cut or another shot that doesn't hurt my opponent.
isn't that the greatest feeling, though? And I had two of those today, not many, but two. I played 8 games. I had two shots, and I smiled to myself. I thought I caught that person off guard. They were expecting this, and I gave them that. And I love that.
That's smart, and that's using your skill set, and that's protecting the safety of your opponents. So it's because we all, at the end of the day, the beauty of pickleball is that you, as you talked about it at the very beginning, you're out of your house. If you're by yourself or whatever, you're out of your house. You are in a social setting. You may be outside getting fresh air, or you're in a gym or another facility, and you're interacting with people and you're moving. Like, it's just, to me, it's the movement. You're getting some level of fitness, and you are having fun. And that's what it's all about. It's fitness, fun, and social. That's what pickleball is all about.
Yeah, I just love it. Well, this has been enlightening, and I knew it would be. And this is a conversation. And thank you for being here tonight. And I think, full disclosure, we tried this earlier today. We had a small technical difficulty. So for you to be here this evening, give me more of your time is so appreciated. And I said to my wife coming down to the studio, I'm just so hoping we can fix this technical issue. I've been waiting to talk to you on this level for a long time. You've been so generous in supporting the podcast, and I can't say thank you enough for that. And thank you for all you're doing for not only the OPA, Diana, but for the sport in general. And I think the more people out there like you advocating for the right way to play, to understand the game, to appreciate and respect the game. And I think it speaks to, everything about this great sport. And I think we all, as players, and again, not here to preach, but I think we have a small responsibility to advocating for the game and being ambassadors in the right way, and to bring new people into the game and introduce them in a way that makes sense. And what I've learned tonight, I've known a bit of the background, but to hear you express it and to explain it is just remarkable. And congratulations on all of that. I think there's a model there that other clubs should be paying attention to. And so I really applaud you and the founders and everyone involved for doing what you're doing. And on that note, I just ask, is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you'd like to briefly touch base because I'm going to ask you to come back. You know that. I'm not going to let you away with just one. I'm going to chase you down again later this year and get an update on what you're up to and what the OPA is up to and the sport in general. But yeah, do we miss anything tonight that you'd like to touch on?
Just if any other organizations interested in anything that the OPA offers, the way we set up our leagues, our criteria, our assessment, we are always open for conversations. Everything we have is open book, and we're willing to help any other organization.
I love that. Pickleball people are the best, aren't we? I mean, we shouldn't brag, but we are. I mean, if you've
I'm biased with you on that one for sure.
We are just the greatest people in the world. Yeah. And if you're not a pickleball player, please become one. Yes. I wish we could sponsor someone somehow, but yeah, come on, get off the couch, pick up a paddle, give it a try, and it will change your life. So thank you for being here this evening, and thank you for all you're doing for the sport. I love it. And it's been a real pleasure getting to know you and to finally sit down and chat with you on the podcast. So thank you for being here.
Take care. Thanks.